Spicy Toast Gaming here. Thank you for tuning in to our review of Starfield, one of the most hyped games of the year, but one that's actually been a massive disappointment to many people. Now, the game's not terrible, but you definitely need to approach it the way the devs intended and have the right expectations going into it to get the most out of this game. We're going to be breaking down the story, the combat, and just this overall world, giving you the pros and cons so you know what to expect from this game and whether or not it's worth your money. I hope you enjoy the video, and let's get into it. Let's start off with the story. Now, we're intentionally going to be fairly vague as we don't want to spoil anything for you, but you start off as a miner, and while you're mining, you come across a certain artifact, which happens to be of great value to a group called Constellation. Constellation is a group of explorers that are trying to uncover the mysteries of the universe. That object you happen to find is part of one of those mysteries. So you join Constellation to try to fully unravel this mystery. That's the main plot of this game. It'll take you around 30 hours to complete and see you traveling to many different worlds, doing many different things, generally looking for different MacGuffins to further along the plot. During the story, there's going to be specific missions where the game forces you to use a specific companion. The different companions are members of Constellation, and those missions where you're forced to interact with them is normally how the game introduces you to each of the characters. I understand why the game is doing that, however, it is annoying that the game is forcing you to play with these companions if you really didn't want to. Overall, those missions aren't too bad, and the story itself is decent. They definitely play it safe, but they also try to throw some twists and turns at you. Most of them you're going to see from a mile away, but the game will probably surprise you once or twice. The ending, though, is actually pretty solid and can lead directly into New Game Plus if you choose. Now, the story definitely won't blow you away, but I think it fits the role of most Bethesda stories, which just has you play it like once, maybe twice, and then never bother with it again. At least that's how I tend to play like Skyrim. I get to Whiterun and then never play any more of the main story. And that's probably what you'll end up doing here on future playthroughs. Now, the main issue with the story is actually present throughout the entire game, and that's going to be a lack of choice. As an example of this, I didn't dive straight into the story. I actually spent a while exploring the universe, and while exploring, I came across an interesting outpost that had a hidden network of tunnels underneath it. While exploring these tunnels, I found a wall that seemed to be out of place. It seemed like it was blocking off one of the paths of one of these tunnels, and so I tried to blow up the wall, tried to get through it, but was unable to. Now, later when I was playing the story, it sent me back to that location, and now while playing through, that wall was missing. So you could further progress down these tunnels and end up with the object that was part of that story mission. This is rather annoying. As I was there earlier, I could have picked it up, but the developers threw up an artificial wall in front of me so that I couldn't actually complete the objective that I didn't know was there at the time. It would have been awesome if I could have grabbed that item, brought it back to Constellation, and be like, hey, what is this? Then be like, whoa, that's something we've been looking for a long time, or how did you find this, or just any extra dialogue that rewarded you for going out and actually exploring. But no, they throw an artificial wall to keep you from doing that. This ties into the main issue that this game has, which is not being able to play the game how you want to play it as a player. It doesn't reward creativity or thinking outside the box. It actively throws walls up to stop you from doing that. They want you to play the game the way they want you to play it. Any other way, they will try to fight and make sure you can't do that. Further along these lines, they bring back the most annoying feature from Skyrim, which is the fact you can't kill NPCs. If you try to kill an important NPC back in Skyrim as well as this game, they'll then just go down on like one knee, stagger for like 30 seconds, and then pop right back up. Now, the reason I think they do this is so that you don't ruin characters or don't kill characters that are part of future quest lines, but it's just another way of the developers keeping you from playing the game how you want to play it. This is in stark contrast to like Baldur's Gate 3 that just came out this year, that lets you play exactly how you want and doesn't try to punish you for it. In that game, if you want to kill all of your companions just because you're a psychopath, you can do that. The game lets you do that, and there will normally be extra dialogue and stuff for doing that. Even if this is going to ruin the game for you, or keep you from completing certain quests. They don't care. If you want to do it, you can do it. That really isn't present here in Starfield and is really disappointing. That's like the one feature I really was hoping they didn't bring forward from their previous games, but it is still here and can really cause you a lot of problems during certain quests, and I'll touch on that a lot more in the video tomorrow where we talk about actual spoilers, but I won't bring that up here as it will spoil major parts of certain quest lines. Enough about the story though, let's go talk about the companions. Now, I'm someone that's never really cared about companions in previous games. I know Lydia from Skyrim is still waiting for me in Whiterun. I never bothered picking her up. But here in Starfield, I actually tried to engage with the companion system as much as possible. I fully listened to their different dialogues. I took them out on adventures with me. And I tried to fully invest in the system to give it the best shot of working for me. And the companions are fine. They have their own, storylines. You slowly unwrap their character. They can help you in combat, but I think the most useful thing is just using them as pack mules, giving them extra things to carry. I played with them for half the game at least until I just got frustrated and decided to go the rest solo. The companion system does have some issues though. For one, all of the companions are morally good, which makes them all feel very similar and doesn't give you any other ways to really play. It would have been great if there was some more like morally gray characters that didn't really care what you did one way or the other, or if there was some morally just evil characters that encouraged you to do bad things, and if you did something good, then they'd be upset at you. But there's none of that here. They're just all morally good, which can actually be quite annoying because even though I generally play these games in a quote-unquote good way, there will occasionally still be some NPC that annoys me and I just want to shoot them in the face. But if you do that here, your companions will get very upset at you. The issue though is when your companions are upset, they act like a toxic girlfriend that won't actually tell you what the issue is. And if you actually ask what the problem is, they say, "How dare you for asking, you just should know." So example of this is in the story at a certain point, one of my companions said, "Hey, I want to talk to you." So we talked, they had a heart-to-heart, essentially unloaded a whole bunch of emotional baggage, and then in the end, thanked me for being there for them and said they really appreciated my character. Right after that conversation, suddenly they got very upset at me, saying they can't believe I did what I did, and how they're not talking to me, they're not liking me. I asked them what was wrong, what did I do that caused this, and they said, "How can you pretend to not know what you did?" And they got more upset at me. You see, the developers have only put in one line of dialogue for your companions, regardless of what you do that upsets them. So no matter what you do, they're always going to react the same way if you've done something wrong, which can be quite frustrating, especially in situations where you have no idea why they are upset. Normally this isn't an issue because if you shoot someone in the face, your companion will immediately get upset at you, so it's pretty obvious. But there's times like I had right here where there was absolutely nothing going on and yet suddenly they were very, very upset with me, which really didn't make much sense at all. This was the point where I decided I'm done with companions. I'm not going to bother having them with me anymore. The game does try, though, to make you care about these companions, and I think it generally fails. There's certain points in the story where stuff happens that's supposed to give you an emotional response towards your companions. I never really cared what was going on with them at all, and so those emotional moments totally missed the mark, at least for me. If you like having companions around just for the extra carry weight, then you'll be fine here. I never noticed them getting stuck in walls or blocking doorways or anything like that, but other than that, I didn't find these companions particularly good. I much preferred companions back from Knights of the Old Republic, which is a 20-year-old game. I thought it did a better job there. That's it for companions though. Let's move on and talk about just this whole world. This world really makes me think of the saying, wide as an ocean, deep as a puddle, because it looks vast, but if you try to look behind the surface, there's really no depth behind it. There's a lot of things you can do, but it's generally just going to be following different quest lines. Like I said before, I tried to explore the world a lot before I really did the story. In all the different major cities, I tried to explore them as much as possible, looking for some different awesome secrets to stumble across that were off the beaten path. All of my time was really wasted. I never found anything too interesting to look at, and I never really felt rewarded for my exploration. Also, there's quite often times where it looks like there's going to be a lot to explore, and then really there's nothing there. For one of the residential districts, they have about 4 giant apartment buildings. So I was like, all right, let's go and explore all these different apartments. I'm sure I'll stumble across something interesting that's happening. Well, of these 4 apartment buildings, there's only one that I could actually get into an elevator and go to a floor. All the other ones, you could just go in the lobby. If you try to go into the elevator, there was no floors accessible for you actually to go to. So there's one floor that I could actually go to. Very small hallway, had about 4 doors. 3 of them were completely inaccessible. And then the last one, I was able to pick the lock and get into some random guy's apartment. So again, out of these 4 massive apartment buildings, there was one apartment I could actually break my way into. And there was nothing even interesting in that one apartment. So the game can often look very big, but if you actually try to dig and explore, you're really not rewarded. Also, this world has a real problem with immersion because you're constantly going into loading screens, fast traveling all over the place, and it lacks that sense of continuity that you would normally have in like Skyrim. Skyrim, you just pick a direction and walk, and you're going to stumble across something interesting. That doesn't really happen here. You can go down and explore a planet, but quite often you'll just like explore one area, get in your ship, move to another area to explore. Now, if you want, you can land on a planet, go to an outpost, explore it, and then pull up your scanner and find something else that's still on that planet you can go explore as well. So you can spend a couple minutes running over to that randomly generated structure and explore that as well. This is fine, but the main issue with this is you know that most of these encounters aren't handcrafted. You know that it's just going to be repeatedly generating these random outposts, and so the fact that you know that you're just going into something randomly generated really loses the charm. So technically you can spend essentially forever going and exploring all these planets, and they'll just keep randomly generating more stuff on these planets. But while you're doing it, you just kind of ask yourself why. With Skyrim, there was a limited map, and so you know you could go and explore every single location, and you knew every single location was handcrafted and had a story to tell. That's not the case here. Even if some of them do have some very interesting stories, there's many others where it's just an abandoned facility that has essentially bandits that you clear them out, and that's that. If you're looking for a game and a world that you can keep playing forever, this is definitely one that you can do that. They have repeatable quests that are just randomly generated that you can do at some different kiosks, but the fact that it's not handcrafted and it is so much procedural generation really loses the charm for me and really discouraged me from continuing to explore this world. And even when I went to those handcrafted places like the major cities and tried to fully explore those, I also wasn't rewarded in those situations either. Also, the world with the NPCs quite often feels fairly dead. When I first went into a city, I was sure to stow my gun because I didn't want the guard arresting me or something. But turns out the guards and people don't care. You can point your gun straight at them, shoot right next to the head. They do not care at all. Even Skyrim was better at this, where if you had your weapons out or had magic in your hands, the guards would have different voice lines depending on what you were doing and telling you, hey, don't do that. Where here, no one really cares. Unless you actually shoot someone, it really doesn't matter. So the world seems very vast, but really lacks a lot of that depth, unfortunately. So we've talked about the massive world. What are you actually doing in this world? What is the gameplay or combat really like? Well, if you like shooting, you are going to be happy here. If you like anything else, probably not. The shooting is actually pretty solid. The guns feel and look pretty cool. And while there can be some issues with some weird hitboxes, that doesn't pop up that often. So generally, the shooting, if you're treating this just like a first-person shooter, you're going to have a good time. There's a good variety of weapons, although for the first few hours, you're really only going to see the same like 5, which can be quite frustrating. If, though, you try to play in a different way, either utilizing like stealth or melee, you're going to have a bad time. The melee seems completely worthless. I tried it a couple times and just it felt bad. Maybe if you invest all the points in the melee tree, maybe it'll feel decent, but that's pretty bad if that's what it takes to make melee feel good. It's pretty similar with stealth. I tried to do a stealth build immediately because, Skyrim, stealth archer. Tried that here, invested a lot of points in the different stealth trees, and the stealth still felt pretty useless and a waste of time. So again, if you just want to treat this like an FPS, you'll have a good time here. Otherwise, if you want to do a melee or stealth build, probably don't bother. Some of the other gameplay systems have had a different coat of paint, but don't really feel like really much of an improvement. They actually potentially feel like a step back. Like the lockpicking is a fun little minigame, but you actually have to put points into the lockpicking skill in order to pick the lock of that skill. For instance, if you come across a expert lock and you don't have the point in expert lockpicking, you can't even try to pick the lock. In my opinion, this is a massive downgrade over like Skyrim, where even if you didn't have any points in lockpicking, you could still successfully pick a master lock if you were good/lucky enough. Here though, you just can't even attempt it at all, which is quite disappointing. Other systems like crafting, again, they're slightly different than the way they've done it in other games, but it just feels like change for change's sake, not really an evolution of that formula, at least not in my opinion. So we brought up a lot of negative aspects of this review, but we don't actually think this is a bad game. It's just a game that definitely has some issues, and I want to make sure that you're going into this with the right expectations. I know for myself, there's points where I was really enjoying this game, and there's other parts where I was very, very frustrated. So what are my tips to get the most out of this game and enjoy it the most? Well, first up, just go into this as it's another Bethesda game. Don't try to hype it up as, oh, it's the first new world for Bethesda. It's been 25 years in development. Oh, it must be amazing. Their first game in like 11 or 12 years or something, other than Fallout 76, which most of us just pretend didn't happen. Don't try to hype yourself up or get excited about this being an amazing game. It's another Bethesda game in a new universe. Go into this expecting that it's a first-person shooter. If you try to do a really fun stealth build or melee build, that's really not going to work. Just go in expecting first-person shooter and you will then enjoy it. Also, the inventory management can be pretty bad in this game. The materials especially can be quite heavy and aren't really that useful unless you're trying to do a lot of crafting. So I would recommend, especially for your first playthrough, don't bother picking up any material. If you want material later, you can easily buy a whole bunch of it from vendors. Just do that instead. And for your first playthrough, don't bother picking up any material whatsoever. You'll have a much more enjoyable time playing this game. Also, don't try to go off the beaten path. Don't try to think up creative solutions. Just go and enjoy the quests the way the developers intended. Because if you don't do that, you're probably just going to end up getting frustrated that you can't do what you're wanting to do. Also, if you enjoy modding or like having mods on your game, Bethesda games always have a very vibrant modding community that'll let you tweak the game to kind of make it exactly how you want. So even all the problems that this game has, most of them will end up getting fixed by modders. So if you're someone that likes modding their game, then this will be another great opportunity for you. If you're someone, though, that you don't care about modding and you were looking forward to a new revolutionary game and just a very immersive game as well, you probably want to look somewhere else. Baldur's Gate just came out. It's very good. The new Cyberpunk update and expansion seems like it'll be very promising, so you might want to go for that. Or maybe even just go back and play Skyrim again. You'll probably have a better time than you will with this game. I hope you enjoyed the review. I'm sorry if it disappointed you if you were really looking forward to this game. If you want a more detailed discussion about all parts of this game, especially one that's not as scared to deal with spoilers, I will be having a podcast video with the wife tomorrow where we talk about the game, including spoilers, in a longer format video. So if you're interested, tune into that tomorrow. Otherwise, I hope you have a great day.